This is the story of how I almost died in a school shooting when I was in high school about 16 years ago. When I was in school, we had, I don't know if this is still a thing, but we had something called study hall. It was a period during the day, usually in the middle of the day, right before lunch, where you would go to the auditorium. And in the auditorium, I don't know if it's still this way, but there were these giant benches that would be put up against the side of the wall. And then they would come down like this so you could sit along them during lunch period or study hall. Um, so when you walked in to study hall, you would see hundreds of kids just sitting at these desks. And I was sat near the front. You had assigned seating every single day. You sat next to this person. You don't get to sit next to your friends because they didn't want you to talk to each other. It was very, now that I think back on it, it was very creepy to look out upon another hundred of my acquaintances and see that no one was talking. And then there was a headmaster or a teacher sitting in the front making sure you were quiet. I sat at the front on the left, right in front of the Coca Cola machines because they had Coke and candy machines in our school. And for some reason, in the back, there was an old cigarette machine. I knew it was a cigarette machine because you could tell through the paint. You could see Camel, Marlboro, Newport. But for some, it wasn't working. It's just I remember thinking that's fucking weird. So anyway, every day I sat next to this short blonde kid that had a buzz cut. And every single day, I got the newspaper. I've always been interested in the news and history and learning, even though my college did no fucking teaching. And every day, I pulled out the sports section and gave it to him, this kid next to me, every day for about a year. And then one day, I get the newspaper. I pull out the sports section, give it to him. He looks at me and smiles like he always did. And then the doors opened up right in front of me. There were doors on either side in the front, and three police officers came in. One stayed at the door, one immediately talked to the teacher at the front, and another one walked up behind me to this kid and then immediately slammed his head into the table. He then pulled back his arms, and I could hear it crack. That's how hard they pulled him back. Cuffed him, picked him up, didn't help him up, picked his full weight up from his back like that. And the kid didn't make a noise. And they pulled him to the front and then walked him out. And then the police officer that was talking to the teacher, he left, and then the door shut. This was, I'd never seen anything like this. And it might not surprise you, but I've always had a kind of fuck you mentality when it comes to authority figures. So I figured that there was something going on. So what I did was I got up, I walked past the door, past the teacher that was yelling for me to sit back down the hallway, and out of that building into the adjacent building where I knew the principal was. Because if something like this was happening, my logic was the principal probably knows what's going on. I walked past the secretary, I don't know what you would call that, and in front of his office, and I knocked on the door and he opened and I walked in. I sat down on the chair that was away from his desk and I said, "What the fuck just happened?" Um, I was brash. I should not have said it that way, but I was an asshole teenager, let's be honest. I said, I sit next to this kid that was just arrested in front of me and I want to know why. He said, I'm not going to tell you. And I said, you're going to fucking tell me or I'm calling the cops, which was kind of stupid because the cops were there. Um, and then he said, you don't need to know. And then I said, I will call the news. That that was the golden that was the ticket right there. He looked at me and then he said, all right. He opened his desk and pulled out a piece of paper. And that piece of paper was a print of a crumpled note. On that print of that crumpled note was a list of almost 100 names. Many of them I knew and that were in the study hall with me at the time. At the bottom of that note was my name. It wasn't the last name, but it was near the bottom. My real legal name. It was misspelled, by the way. Anyway, on the top was, it said, all will pay, and then the date of the Columbine massacre. Apparently, the reason that they found this note was because we recently installed security cameras at our school. And we were really tough on people that littered. At least the authority was. Um, so they found the crumpled piece of paper on the ground, and then they looked at the security camera to see who found it, and it was the kid that sat next to me. Um, they looked up the date, and then they got concerned because it was a creepy note. So then they opened his locker while he was in class the previous day, and they found 3 loaded rifles. I really had to talk to the principal to get him to disclose this information. Like I said, I was a little bit of a pushy asshole in high school, but the the moment he told me that information, he stood up and said, "If you fucking tell anyone about this, you're expelled." Yeah. So the only reason I'm telling this story now is because I don't think there's going to be any retribution because it was 16 years ago and that school was demolished. Um, Here's a funny side note. That day, when I went home from school, I sat down on my couch and I watched my big primitive television set. Big screen televisions used to be kind of like it was a like a projector on the inside with a glass screen. It looked like it's so pixelated, but I sat down and we had a subscription to a music channel, um, and I put on alternative, and the first song that played was a song I'd never heard before called "Youth of the Nation" by POD. If you've never heard that song, it opens up with a first person description of a kid explaining how he wished he told his parents he loved them before going to school and getting shot to death. I don't believe in karma or God or anything like that, but I do think that sometimes the universe just wants to fuck with you, and that was not a good day. Anyway, yep, that's it. See ya.